Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology of January 16th through 22nd, 2023. So here we are, another week. Sorry for the late start, trying to get my act together. But you know, it's Capricorn season. That's the name of the game. We got to get our acts together. But this week, we are coming to the end of Capricorn season, which, you know, it's just starting to fly by, isn't it? And we get ready for Aquarius season. And that also means that we're starting to get towards the end of the zodiac. So Capricorn's 10th sign, 11th sign is Aquarius, which brings us to Pisces later on. And that is the end of the astrological year. But this week, for those who celebrate the Lunar New Year, we are coming to the end of the lunar year, which is 2 new moons after the winter solstice. So here we go. We're going to have a new moon on January 21st. And this one's going to be in Aquarius. It's the start of the Lunar New Year. But for those that don't pay attention to the Lunar New Year, it's the start of this new chapter that we're going to live for the next 4 weeks through the sign of Aquarius. But we got lots going on this week. Mercury turns direct. That's maybe not the highlight. The highlight is Uranus turning direct. And this is going to be on January 22nd, so the end of this week. And that's where I want to get into a bigger story. And we also, speaking of bigger stories, did you know that the sun right now, it's in Capricorn. It's going to line up with Pluto this week. It's called a conjunction. This is the second to last conjunction of the sun and Pluto in Capricorn we're going to have for 250 years. I mean, we weren't doing this in 2008, and I was certainly a baby astrologer in 2008, but it's kind of hard to believe that here we are 15 years later, and it's time for Pluto to start to make its moves out of Capricorn, which is crazy. We'll talk about that in a moment as well, but if you are watching live, do say hello. It's always nice to see familiar faces. I know some of you are my clients, some of you watch every week. You are literally around the world. We are truly a global audience, which, as you hear me say, it warms my Sagittarius rising heart. But for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area, and every week we gather live to talk about the astrology. And you hear me say every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. That's the part that we have to show up for. And then how do we show up for Capricorn season? How do we show up for Aquarius season, which we are on the cusp of this week? And if you're not watching live, it's always, for those that watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on Spotify, we are all over the place. Always nice to hear from you all. So let's dive in. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about this week. Let's start with the fact that we are wrapping up Capricorn season. So it's not just Capricorn season that we're wrapping up this week. We're also wrapping up the Capricorn new moon cycle that began on December 23rd. Sorry, my brain's going back to the winter solstice. So December 21st, we had the solstice, the start of Capricorn season. For those of, I know we have friends here in the southern hemisphere. You started the summer solstice. Here in the northern hemisphere, we started the winter solstice. But 2 days later, we had the Capricorn new moon, and that opened up a lunar month focused on the energies of Capricorn. Time, karma, aging, getting our stuff together. There goes my dog. Getting our stuff together. Hopefully he's not going to start barking. Getting our stuff together, getting organized, and really getting focused to create the structures that we need going into the new year. And the thing that's a little bit different about this Capricorn season is that it plays upon the energies of what's called Saturn square Uranus. This is why the past couple of years, things look different. Capricorn's very material, it's manifestation. It talks about our material and manifested lives. And things maybe look different. We're maybe in different places. The physicality of our life looks very different than it did back in 2020. But so we're coming to the end of Capricorn season this week. Then the sun makes something called a conjunction to Pluto, which I alluded to in our introduction. This It's a little bit of a technical term for those that don't know some astrology. I love talking about astrology. I know I got some incense going in case you want to know what the smoke is. It's not the ancestors, but I love talking about astrology and I love teaching about astrology. And so a conjunction means that two planets come together in the sky. I realize we cannot see Pluto. Certainly we can't see Pluto and the sun because the sun gets in the way. But they're approximately in the same place in the sky. I say approximately because there's something called declination. I'm really getting off on a tangent. But my point is that this is one of the sun's last times making a conjunction to Pluto in Capricorn. It's kind of a big deal. It means we're starting to wrap up a 15-year story. I want you all to go back and think to 2008. 2008 was the year that Pluto first went into Capricorn. Here's a couple of things that are really important to remember. Number one, Pluto is an evolutionary planet. It means it works on a level that's different than your average everyday planet. So probably sure that each and every one of you knows where your sun is. That's what's called sun sign. But did you know when you were born, Pluto occupied a certain place in your astrology? That's your Pluto sign. Pluto moves very slowly, although for probably the cohort of people that are watching, Pluto spent the least amount, moved the fastest during our lifetime. Moves the fastest through Libra and Scorpio. I'm personally Pluto and Libra generation. Maybe you have Pluto in Leo, maybe you have Pluto in Virgo, born in the 1960s, Pluto in Libra throughout the 1970s, into the beginning of the 1980s, and we have Pluto in Scorpio, etc. But here, Pluto's starting to spend longer and longer in the signs that it occupy. But Pluto, again, is an evolutionary force. It's trying to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. So we've been collectively and personally doing our work of evolution through the sign of Capricorn since 2008. It was a big seismic shift in 2008. And I'm pretty sure if you are a Capricorn, if you are an Aries, Libra, and Cancer, these what are called cardinal signs, your life started to take a shift in the 2008 to 2010, 2011 time frame. And this is the only time in our lives that Pluto is going to be in Capricorn. And Capricorn is a sign of matter, our manifested lives, the structure, power, and something has shifted. And even if you're saying, Katie, I'm not a Capricorn, Capricorn is somewhere in your personal astrology. If you know your sun sign, or even if you know your rising sign, I do have a link. It's in the show notes, or you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. It's called Pluto and Capricorn Sign by Sign. And you can see what part of your life has maybe seen a total demolition and rebuild since 2008. I'm here in Jersey City, in case you all don't know that. And I'm right across the river from Manhattan, and they're tearing down something that's near my apartment. It's an old Bed Bath & Beyond. And I'm just like watching them destroy, like tear apart this old store. And I'm like, this is such a metaphor for Capricorn season right now. As we get to the end of Pluto's time in Capricorn, there has been the need to completely transform and remake certain structures in our life. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but starting March 23rd of this year, 2023, Pluto is going to make its first visit to Aquarius, a sign that it hasn't been in since the 1780s and 90s. Wow, that's crazy. So Pluto is only going to spend a few months in Aquarius. It's going to kind of make what are called 3 ingresses. It's going to go back and forth 3 times. And by November of 2024, it's fully into Aquarius. Again, a sign it has not been in since 250 years. So that part of, we're going to see like a seismic shift, probably not as palpable as Pluto going into Capricorn, because Capricorn's an earth sign, Aquarius is an air sign. But we're going to start to see some pivot points in 2023 and 2024. I actually talked about this, shameless plug. I talked about this in my Astrology of 2023 webinar. You can still get the 3-hour replay to learn about Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn in Pisces, and what this means for you in the coming year. So anyway, but yeah, so I want you all to start to pay attention, because something is starting to shift, and it's kind of crazy that we are wrapping up Pluto's time in Capricorn, which means that we are starting to see the results, even though it's maybe hard to see because it's been such a long cycle, the result of what we've been working on, transforming, tearing down, and rebuilding since 2008. If you know what part of your chart where Capricorn is, that's Wednesday, January 18th, the same day that the same day that Mercury turns direct in Capricorn. Got a lot going on in Capricorn right now. And Mercury's been winding its way back through Capricorn. It did turn retrograde, I think it was the 29th of December. And it didn't do it, let's say, conjunct Pluto, but it was definitely talking to Pluto when it turned retrograde. Mercury retrograde is a time to analyze and reflect. It's the yin side of, let's say, the direct yang side. And with Mercury turning direct on the 18th, the idea is that we now need to move forward with a decision, a commitment. I'm saying a commitment because Capricorn, the sign that Mercury is in right now, is all about commitment. Saturn is like, what are the things that we need to choose, to decide on, to reach towards in the new year? How do we get real? How do we step up to a higher bar? Capricorn is a very typically no-nonsense sign. It's very black and white. And so doing it again. Mercury turning direct on the 18th, like we can't, we have to make that sort of laser-focused decision. Mars is now direct as of last week, the 12th of January. So we're starting to get a lot of movement in the sky forward. Then we get to the 20th, and the sun goes into Aquarius. And before we get to the sun getting into Aquarius, we are in the dark of the moon. So even though it's like we want to move forward, we have this sense of like the end of something, the end of a cycle, the need to maybe to wait until after the new moon on the 21st of January. So keep that in mind, that the dark of the moon is typically quiet. It's time to shed. It's time to release. And the other thing I almost forgot, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that when the sun gets to 29 degrees of Capricorn on the 19th of January, it gets to the same degree as a solar eclipse that we're going to have on April 20th. Just FYI. And what I've noticed as an astrologer is that midpoint of the eclipse, whether it's before or after, is really active. So we actually are coming up to the midpoint of the eclipses, by the way. So whether it's the sun at 29 degrees of Capricorn on the 19th, that's threading its way forward in the future to April 20th. So just take notes, put some information in your calendar. Like, how is that threading to April? You're like, Katie, I don't know. It's not April yet. I know. But the eclipse that we're going to have on April 20th is going to be the first in Aries. So far, we've been having these eclipses back and forth in Taurus and Scorpio. But in 2023, that starts to shift. So we get that first eclipse, April 20th, in Aries, the sign of renewal, new beginnings, action, courage, bravery, leadership. But this eclipse is at 29 degrees, and 29 degrees is the end of a sign. So there's a sense of like, the bar is set higher. We have to get real. We have to take action, but we have to do it in the energy of Saturn. And sometimes feeling like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. So pay attention the best that we can. And then we go into that Aquarius season on the 20th of January, followed by the Aquarius new moon on the 21st. So the one that's on the 21st, now we've gotten to the midpoint of the eclipses. So I want you all to think back now to, almost at August, think back to October 25th. We had a Scorpio solar eclipse, and that was at 2 degrees of Scorpio, followed 2 weeks later by a lunar eclipse in Taurus at 8 degrees. No, that's not right. November 8th, that eclipse was at, I can't remember, 15, 16, 14. It'll come to me, Taurus. So about the midpoint of the sign. And so here we're coming to that halfway mark between the eclipses of October, November, and the eclipses of April and May of 2023. And sometimes the seed is made in October and November or with the eclipse, and then we have to get to the midpoint of the eclipse to see what the seed is bringing into our lives. And I just will say this very neutrally, because I am a Scorpio, but Scorpio is not an easy sign, and it's the prism that we're living life through for a 6-month period from the Scorpio solar eclipse of October 25th to the Aries solar eclipse of April 20th. That's 6 months period of time. And to live life through the lens of Scorpio, it means to go within, to face ourselves, to do the work, to maybe get uncomfortable and get into these spaces around intimacy and vulnerability. And when I try to talk about Scorpio with people, because people are like, oh, Scorpio, but it's a necessary sign in the zodiac. It represents the decay to Taurus, the sign that's opposite. Taurus is rebirth and fertility. Without that necessary but sometimes uncomfortable process, you don't have the rebirth of life. So there is something, and here we are 3 months into it, and we got 3 months left of really looking at what needs to decay, what needs to leave, what needs to prepare so that we can have the rebirth of life when we get into this new cycle, starting with the solar eclipse in Aries, April 20th. So it's it's got some deep emotional material to it. I'm not gonna lie, but we can't, even though we're 3 months out, I don't want you all to lose sight of the fact that we're in a Scorpio solar eclipse cycle, south node of the moon, still in Scorpio. So how do we release? How do we go into the parts of ourselves that we've disowned, the parts that we don't want to look at? How do we get deep? Scorpio is typically a very deep sign. It's also a very guarded sign. How do we start to let go of some of that guard? And I'm saying that because there's so much going on with Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus that we can't have that level of guard. And it's not to say that we have to lose our protection, but it's to really, be in that energy in a very different way. Maybe that makes sense to you all. Maybe that doesn't. But I'm planting a seed because, there are going to be points, especially as we get into Aquarius season, we have to go back to October 25th. We have to go back to Scorpio season and reflect upon our relationship with the archetype of death and rebirth, power and transformation. One of the signs that exists on this one was called the cross of matter, which is Taurus, Scorpio, and Leo, Aquarius. But anyway, that's that. So this Aquarius new moon that we have on the 21st of January, it not only opens up this season that's dedicated to Aquarius. Aquarius is a big picture sign. It's the second to last zodiac sign. It's not personal. It's not about what I had for lunch. It's not about relationships on a one-to-one level. It's about all relationships, our social connection, our friendships, our community, our sense of belonging, or a sense of disconnection. That sometimes that emotional pain that comes with trying to find connection in the world, but also even broader social themes, social causes, social issues, science and technology. It's also a sign that points us towards the future. I will say that there is the cultural definition of the sign of Aquarius as this sort of peace and love sign. I think that came out in the 1960s. But then there's the reality of Aquarius. It is ruled by Saturn. We can't forget that. But there is that facet of Aquarius, and maybe you are an Aquarius, where it is very forward thinking. Because Aquarius's job, one of them, as a zodiac sign, is to vision the future so we can bring it into the present moment. That's why Aquarius is typically about 20 years ahead of all of us. So yeah, we're going into Aquarius season. And Aquarius season also means, and also the Aquarius new moon on the 21st, that we are checking in with Saturn's time in Aquarius. This is, Saturn's been in Aquarius since March of 2020 December of 2020. And Saturn is in that last lap of its time in Aquarius. It's not going to be back in Aquarius for another 30 years. So what have we learned since 2020 around friendship, and community and connection. And sort of these broader social themes, social issues, social causes, social equity, what connects us, what divides us. But in the end, Aquarius is about humanity. It's not always a humanitarian sign, because you do see both sides in the archetype. And I mean this as a sign, not necessarily as a sun sign, but the archetype of Aquarius is both the humanity and the inhumanity. It's just two sides of the same coin. So Saturn's going to be starting to say to us over the next few weeks, what have you learned? And as Saturn gets to the end of Aquarius, this will be in the end of February into the very beginning of March, we see the result of our work. Saturn gives us our report card. No pressure, right? So Aquarius new moon, Aquarius season, midpoint of the eclipses, which means that we may see some interesting things happening this week and maybe even next week as we see some things pivot and people come in and out of our lives and opportunities come in and out of our lives. And then Uranus turns direct on the 22nd of January. I told you we had a lot to talk about. So on January 22nd, Sunday, Uranus turns direct at 14 degrees. So it turned retrograde on August 24th of 2022. These are two moments that are linked in time, but that's also part of this larger story. You've heard me talk about this before. Since May of 2018, March of 2019, just throwing a lot of facts at you all today. Since May of 2018, March of 2019, Uranus has been in Taurus. And that part of our life maybe has seen a complete awakening, a seismic shift, a change over the last 4 years. Uranus, it's about awakenings. It's the planet that's trying, it's like Pluto, but it's different. It's an evolutionary planet, and it's trying to get us to awaken at any cost. And Uranus demands radical authenticity. And Taurus, just by its nature as a sign, as an energy, it wants to preserve, it wants to keep things the same, because that's how life flourishes. But Uranus is very unsentimental. It's not that we can't maintain stability and security. It's not that we can't support life while Uranus is in Taurus. We have to do it differently. And this means upgrading and changing some of the fundamental structures of our life. And you heard me tell this story again and again, but I used to be in IT. I used to be doing something very different than doing this, sitting in front of you all every Monday. But here we are, because Uranus is like, what are you doing? This is not what you were put on this planet for. And maybe that's something to remember as we go into this weekend, we go into next week. If we are not in alignment with the truth of who we are, that's where Uranus can really show us something different and shake things up. But it may mean that we've got some surprises this week. It's really hard to say. Uranus can be a little bit of a wild card or dark horse, choose your own metaphor. And it's turning direct and it's activating Saturn square Uranus. So this energy we've had throughout 2021 and 2022 that's been like shaking our lives, and the things that we thought would never change have been changing since 2021, if not before. So it's some intense energy this week. And, as we navigate this space, like, how do you take care of yourself? How do you take a leaf out of Taurus? And, even though Uranus is turning direct in Taurus, but still we have to create stability and security in our lives, even if it means doing that very differently. Finally, also on the 22nd of January, Venus makes something called a conjunction to Saturn. That's also something to pay attention to, because Venus and Saturn is very no nonsense. It's like you have to really know your value. You have to know your worth. It's the things that we invest time and money on, and going into the future. It's about serious relationships and commitments. And if something is not ready to pass Saturn's test, it can be a no for Venus, and or it can be a yes, and it's a personal milestone. It's a relationship milestone. There's just a lot of things moving and shaking. And the astrology of this week, and also Venus is the ruler of the North Node in Taurus, of Uranus and Taurus. So it's a possibly, if you zoom out, there's some milestones that are happening this week that are part of a bigger story. And this is, sometimes we have to zoom out. Sometimes we need the energy of Aquarius to help us to connect the dots, to see the bigger picture. that really, like, wow, look what has changed since 2022, 2020, 2018. And I can see the threads of a larger story. I know it's there. You just have to find it. So let's look at the astrology through each of the 12 signs, looking at that Aquarius new moon and also where Uranus is turning direct. So as always, listen for your rising sign and also for your sun sign. These 2 points of very important data that you can sort of see the overlapping story with. So starting with Aries. Aries, so Aquarius is what's called your 11th sign, and you're starting to come to the end of your personal zodiac year. And this is a time for you to look forward, to look out into the future, to sort of vision what are your goals and your wishes and your hopes for this next coming cycle. So your birthday season is that new rebirth of the cycle for you. Then we have the Aquarius new moon, and so this is a time for you to kind of get clear about friends and allies, your friendships, who do you want in your life, who do you not want in your life, and maybe I'm sort of making a little bit of a joke, but Saturn, has been in your 11th since 2020, so maybe the people that were friends in 2020 are not friends in 2020. Saturn can be a little tough on friendships as it goes through this part of your chart. That said, the people who are left are rock solid. And so Saturn is trying to get you to either like commit to certain people in your life or get clear about who's going into your life for the long haul. That said, Uranus is turning direct in your second sign of money and income. And this is playing upon a larger story since 2018 and 2019 about reinventing either how you earn a living. Maybe you've made some big changes in money. Your relationship with money, maybe the things you thought were important or valuable in 2018, 2019, and even 2020 are not important and valuable now. And maybe Uranus is trying to get you to completely make some seismic shifts in these larger themes around value and worth and even self-worth. And like, how do you create stability and security in your life, and whether it's your friends or whether it's just how you feel like you connect to the world on a larger level, how do you make sure that your place in the world is valuable, or your friendships and your community are rock solid and valuable? I will say that Venus is making something called a conjunction to Saturn this week, and Venus is a relationship planet for you. So this is for all the Aries out there that don't have clarity on a relationship or need to get things very clear on a relationship. Saturn can be very black and white. Either it's working or not working. If it's going to work, this is what needs to happen. And if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. That's how Saturn works. So just keep that in mind in case that's relevant. Taurus. So you've heard me talk about this over the past however many months, years, but Uranus has been in your sign since 2018, May 2018, March of 2019. It is in total a 7-year transit. Somebody once asked me, how long is Uranus in Taurus? And I'm like, till 2025, 2026. And then I was like, get ready, Gemini, because then you're next, but we'll get there. Over the past few years, and this is different for every Taurus, for some Taurus risings, yes, you've really seen this. You've seen a very palpable shift of the past few years. Maybe you look different. Maybe your life is radically different. Maybe you're just in a completely different territory than what you're typically used to. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but maybe it needs to be uncomfortable. Uranus's job is to free us, to show us a path that maybe is not the path that we thought, but maybe that one is more in alignment with who we truly are deep down inside. But this has been a seismic shift. And like I said, Uranus has got a few more years back in Taurus, but use this time to really move forward with something, even if it's a little uncomfortable, to break out of old patterns, old ruts, to really shift what your value system is, and the things that you thought you needed a few years ago that you realize you absolutely do not need right now. It does not support you going on. So Uranus is turning direct. That's a little bit of a big shift of energy, and I would just link it back to August 24th. You can even go back to January of 2022 when Uranus turned direct. Then you could go back to the eclipses of October and November of 2022, and even the eclipses around your birthday in April, May. It's all linked, even going back further, but we don't have that much time. So then you have Venus, your planet. It's in your career sign. So there's a lot of, I would say, push right now, Taurus, for you to get clear about your direction in life and really step up into certain duties and responsibilities. And then you have this rendezvous with Saturn on the 22nd, and Saturn's very no nonsense. So you've got some serious commitments to make. It could be a professional milestone, personal milestone that really aligns you with your direction, or maybe Saturn is like, no, the bar is here and you're not. I'm sure that's not the case for you, Taurus. You're great. But it is kind of a sobering, air quotes, sobering week for you, and do with that what you will. Maybe getting very clear, very focused, but at the same time, not necessarily doing things the way that you would typically do them. Gemini, so this week your planet, Mercury, turns direct. So it's been retrograde through something called your 8th sign. And maybe we talked about this last week. The 8th sign in anybody's personal zodiac wheel, it serves the function to test you, to get you to go within, to face the dark parts within. And I will say that Mercury turning direct does tick into this larger period of time since 2008 when Pluto turned into Capricorn. It's been this deep, deep dig into your psyche over the past 15 years. That said, for now, Mercury is turning direct, and so you need to figure out what you're going to do. Mercury in Capricorn's the energy of decision, getting serious, putting down roots, these bigger structures of our life, and how do you take action moving forward with that sense of clarity and sometimes sobering, air quotes, clarity. But it might be a week of big decisions, or you now feel that the goalpost is here and maybe you thought it was here before, because that's the thing about Capricorn energy. It pushes us higher. It really demands integrity. For example, by February, Mercury will be out of Capricorn. So in the meantime, you've got Saturn really pushing you to go further and further and to kind of take your life a bit seriously. That said, Uranus is turning direct, but it's doing so in your 12th sign. So it's a little bit harder to see how this is manifesting for you, because the 12th in our personal astrology chart is the part of our lives that we can't see. It's our dreams, it's our intuition, it's our illusions, it's our spirituality. So this is linking to some bigger, let's say, spiritual shifts or deeper digging into your spirituality since 2018, 2019, and maybe even an awakening. And I will say, especially as Venus comes to Saturn this week on the 22nd, and this has been like a very existential time for you, Gemini, and really needing to figure out what you believe in, what you stand for, what's your truth, and sort of what needs to happen in order to move forward. What do we got? Cancer. So Cancer, you've heard me say it over and over again, but we're almost to the end. I know, just keep ticking the days off your calendar of Saturn's time in your 8th. So that said, Capricorn season for you is a time for you to focus on relationships, connection, interaction. When the sun goes into Aquarius on the 20th of January, you do step into this four-week period that does bring you back to Saturn in Aquarius in your 8th. What does this mean in English? So the 8th sign in anybody's astrology, I call it the 8th room, because this is a space. This is a space inside of us, even though we're talking about astrology. And it's where we have to go to face ourselves. And I'm pretty sure, Cancer, if you go back and you look at your life of the past few years, it hasn't necessarily been easy. Not, across the board, but it's emotionally heavy. It makes you really get into these vulnerable spaces, these spaces around intimacy and power and control and transformation and the psyche. And maybe you've had to face yourselves on a level that you've never faced yourself before. Now that Sun is going into Aquarius to join Saturn, what have you learned? I mean, the Sun is bringing the light to this space, which is symbolic of your underworld, your shadows, and what have you discovered? Because when the Sun gets to Saturn in Aquarius later or in February, it needs to start to take shape and take form. Maybe you saw some things about yourselves that you realize, I don't need these toxic people in my life. I don't need this. I don't need that. So, okay, well, how does that inform you going forward? Because when Saturn finally leaves this space on March 7th, you do enter a period of your life, the next 3 years, where it's about faith, truth, meaning. It's the lived wisdom of your time with Saturn in the 8th. And for some people, it's like, wow, I really discovered some things. And these are the things that will never leave me. These are powerful truths which bring you into March of 2023 and beyond. So this new moon, again, is sort of this time of renewal and revisit, but at the same time, bringing to a close this chapter that has been with you since 2020. Then we have Uranus turning direct in your 11th. So Uranus direct in your 11th is about the shifts and maybe even the seismic shifts in your social life, your social circle, your network since 2018, 2019. And really seeing some changes in friendships or new people coming in. It's not just all bad stuff, and really awakening to a different relationship with community or even your vision upon the world. But I will say that this is a time, especially as it might be like some emotional milestones this week, and maybe you need to sort of make sure you have a hand to hold or a trusted confidant, not because anything's going to happen, but just because you need to feel that support this week. And maybe that's where Saturn's energy can best serve you right now, is as you start to leave this period of your life, you have hopefully rock solid emotional supports in your life. Leo, so you are a fixed sign. You hear me say this kind of every week. And so we have a lot of things happening in those signs this week. So first of all, the Sun going into Aquarius on the 20th starts the season that turns the spotlight on relationship. Do keep in mind that you are coming to the end of a 3-year chapter, where it's about either building partnership, building connection, getting very serious about the type of relationship and partnership you want in your life, not just romantic, but all relationship, reestablishing balance in your life. But also for some people, it has been the start of a serious relationship, like a marriage, or the end of a relationship, because Saturn says no, or Saturn said yes, or Saturn said I do. So the Sun coming into this space on the 20th brings you back to the work that you've been doing since 2020, March of 2020, and also December of 2020. And maybe as you start to get to the end of Aquarius season, it really shows you the results of your hard work. That's the thing about Saturn. It wants our hard work. But that said, you do have Uranus turning direct at 14 degrees of Taurus in your career sign. Not every Leo is living this story the same way, but I have seen a lot of Leos and Leo risings do a lot of big changes in their professional life over the past few years, since 2018, 2019. For some Leo risings, it's a 180 in your professional life, or it's a breakthrough. Maybe your professional life is really starting to take off because this is a time for you to live that energy out in the world. Or it's been seismic, because maybe the professional life or the direction you thought you were going in a few years ago, maybe now the goalposts have changed. So whatever is happening this week is not isolated. You'd have to go back to August 24th when Uranus turned retrograde. You have to go back to the eclipses. We had a lunar eclipse in Taurus, your career sign, on November 8th. So this could energize some shifts and changes and new beginnings or different directions in your professional life. With Venus coming up to a conjunction to Saturn, this could be a big week for you, or even going into next week. We'll talk about this next week, where you have to make some serious commitments, whether it's serious commitments with another person or a partnership or an alliance, or serious decisions about your direction going forward. Virgo, so your planet is Mercury and it's turning direct on the 18th, so Wednesday, January 18th, and it's doing so in Capricorn. And for you, Virgo, Capricorn is what's called your fifth sign. And so whatever Mercury is doing on a very surface level, it's like you need to get very clear about who you are and who you're not. How do you express yourself? How do you prioritize creativity, your talents, your gifts, your abilities? And maybe these sometimes deep and sobering questions like, do you know who you are? Because sometimes, and honestly, oftentimes we don't know who we are, even though we think we do. So Saturn is, and I'm saying Saturn because Mercury is in the sign of Saturn. Saturn is speaking to us, speaking to you, Virgo, this week. And, what needs to change? What needs to shift? Or where does there need to be a commitment needs to be made? Or maybe you need to get, very clear and say, no, something's not working. Mercury is turning direct in the same sign that Pluto has occupied since 2008. So we can't sort of see this week, lose part of the bigger picture. I realize it's a 15-year picture, so it's a huge picture. But how do you really see that the personal changes and sort of the changes in self that have been happening over the last 15 years? Because Pluto is going to start to leave this space. That said, Aquarius season for you and the Aquarius new moon takes you into this time that actually you've been working on since 2020, which is health, wellness. How do you take care of your body, your relationship with your body? How do you really sit and take command of the details of your human life? This part of your astrology, you don't get more real world than any other part of your chart. It's really the nuts and bolts of what you need to get done on a day-to-day basis, and taking care of your health, taking care of your life, having things in focus and organization. And Saturn's been giving you a framework of let's say things that need to change in this part of your life since 2020. And keep that in mind because Pluto's going to go into this space. I'm really getting ahead of myself, but Pluto will go into this space starting on March 25th. Gosh, like everybody's calling me. Anyway, so to decline that call. But Mercury turning direct, so really kind of sit and pay attention to the story that's coming through for the 18th of January. Then we have the Aquarius new moon on the 20th, 21st, and then Uranus turns direct on the 22nd. And it's doing so in your sign. That really opens you up to seeing the world. And maybe you've traveled more. I realize maybe not in 2020, but maybe you've traveled more since 2018, or maybe you've shifted your relationship and with what you believe and what you stand and how you express your views of the world, or maybe you need to open up your eyes to a new way of seeing things, or maybe even prioritize education in new ways. But this is a time, and I think because Virgo is an earth sign, like earth energy can typically get really in its grooves. And that's, I think, one of the harder parts of the past few years is that the grooves, as they were a few years ago, are not the grooves right now. And maybe that's just giving you an opportunity to break out of old thinking and maybe even old beliefs and old patterns. Libra. So get my brain back because I get texts and phone calls. But anyway, so Libra. So we've got Capricorn season coming to an end. Capricorn forms the base of your astrology. So this has been 4 weeks of really taking care of home and family, and even taking care of roots and your foundation. Then we go into a new season with the sun going into Aquarius. So the Aquarius new moon talks about you in a way, and it's a season where you need to kind of come back, and maybe this new moon is giving you a sense of renewal. Come back to what makes you you. There are 8 billion people on this planet, but there's only one you. And I know that sounds a little cheesy, but it is absolutely the case. And there's a million reasons why we lose ourselves. And this is a season, Aquarius season, for you to get back to the essence of your being, to focus on the things that do light you up, that give you life, that are fun. And we don't always think about Aquarius and fun, but it are fun, and really help you to get serious about the things that give you passion. Do keep in mind that Saturn has been in this space since 2020, and this is part of a larger 3-year chapter of your life where you have to take yourself seriously. You have to take your talents. And for some people, creativity, the most creative thing we can do is to have a child if we can. And maybe this has been a time where children have come into your life, or maybe you're thinking about starting a family. But of course, that's not relevant for everybody, but this for those that it is. And Saturn, as it gets to the end of this part of the chart, into the end of February and beginning of March, Saturn is asking you, okay, do you know who you are? Are you taking yourself seriously? And keep that in mind, because Venus is what's called your ruling planet. So by extension, you are going to have a meeting with Saturn on the 22nd, because we have Venus conjunct Saturn. So the bar is set higher for you this week, Libra, and especially with Uranus turning direct in your 8th. And you've heard me say this before, but it's like, how do you self-sabotage? How do you lose yourself? What are the parts of your deeper psyche and emotions and part of your personality that you don't always look at and own? And Uranus is giving you a chance to really see things, and maybe see things that you don't typically see. But that said, with a lot of Saturn energy this week, it's just talking about personal milestones, getting serious, really thinking about time and legacy. I realize that's a big word. And what kind of future do you want to create for yourself? And what inhabits that future? You need to make sure that you inhabit that future. Scorpio, so lots going on this week for you. So let's start with big picture stuff, Scorpio. Well, number one, Mars last week on the 12th, it turned direct. So your planet is now moving forward. Thank God. But it's been in what's called your 8th sign. So it's been a little bit of a heavy emotional time over the past few months. The other big picture thing is that Saturn is starting to come to an end of its time in what's called your 4th. Your 4th is the base and the foundation of your personal astrology. Since 2020, it's about who is home, where is home, putting down roots, creating a lot of bigger emotional and life foundations. Maybe you've started a household or started a family, made a big move in the past couple of years. Maybe your parents have needed more attention. You've had to take more care of them if that is relevant. But it is a bigger time where your relationship with family, and I realize sometimes family is a complicated word, but your relationship with the word family has needed to do some work. And whether that's to make that stronger, whether that's to recalibrate that and to free it from what has made that word complicated in the past. Maybe, again, you've made a big move, but as you start to get to the end of February to the beginning of March, it's like, what is the result of this time in your life? Where is home? Who is home? How are you settling down? I realize settling down means different things to different people, but if Scorpio, you're in a phase of settling down. That said, Venus coming up to the conjunction with Saturn this weekend, the 22nd, it does speak to these larger themes around relationship and connection that have been going on since 2018, 2019. So Uranus, also on the 22nd, turns direct in your relationship sign. And this has been for Scorpios different, but this is about new people coming into your life, maybe new relationships and partnerships and types of partnerships that are so different than what you normally go for. Maybe you were in a marriage or a serious relationship a few years ago, and now you're in something very different. I've seen that happen. Maybe you've been single for 10 years, and here comes Uranus. And Uranus is like, what's happening? Like, we need people. You can't be your own fortress, Scorpio, and people come into your life. But that said, with the energy of Saturn in this week, there is a little bit of heaviness and having to get serious and having to make, commitments. But at the same time, Uranus is throwing us a wild card. And I think it does speak to the larger seismic shifts that have been happening for Scorpio. I think if I'm being completely real, I think Scorpio and Aquarius are having a little bit of a hard time in terms of the intensity of the astrology right now. But, and I know you know this philosophically, Scorpio, through sometimes the most difficult astrology, the most amazing transformation can happen. That's sort of the power of your sign. So just keep hanging in there. We got Sagittarius. Sagittarius. So what do we got? Jupiter, it's your planet. Jupiter is kind of speeding its way through Aries. So this continues to be a larger chapter of your life, but it's about getting back to the things that light you up, that give you passion, that help you create and nourish who you are. Then we've got the, almost a Sagittarius. We've got the Aquarius new moon in your third. So this is starting to bring to it's a new season. It's a time of renewal, but it's starting to bring to a close a chapter that has been happening since 2020. And this has been a chapter where you've had to take your voice and take how you communicate, how you think, how you listen, and even what you choose seriously. Saturn's pretty, black and white, no BS planet. And as you get to the end of February into the beginning of March, Saturn is saying to you, okay, how have you been taking your voice seriously? And do keep in mind that voice is two things. It's the words out of your mouth, but it's also how you inhabit those words, how you bring the spark of who you are, the power of who you are. And keep in mind with that word power, because Pluto is going to occupy this space starting in March. Big seismic shift where you now have to live in the power of your voice, your mind, your decisions. So this is a new chapter for you, and it's at the same time it's bringing to a close something that's been with you the past few years, and in a way preparing you for the changes once Saturn goes into Pisces in March 7th of 2023. That said, Uranus is turning direct in your sixth sign of health and wellness, but it's also your relationship with your day-to-day life. And I've seen this has been different for every Sagittarius, but I've seen some Sagittarius make big shifts in diet, like how they take care of their body, what they eat, fitness. Everybody has different needs, of course, but Uranus is trying to shift your relationship with your physical life, your physical reality. And what is more physical than health and wellness? So how do you really, commit to making changes in this part of your life? And these changes are building off the past few years. Capricorn. Happy birthday, Capricorn. We are in the end of your season. So the sun is coming up to Pluto this week. And, keep in mind if you are, let's say, born in December, you went through this 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. But if you're born at the end of Capricorn, you are now, your sun is getting what's called a Pluto conjunction. So this might be a little bit of an intense birthday for you if your birthday is this week, Capricorn. It's about how do you, have a rebirth? I realize that's a big word and it's a lot to unpack, and we can save that for another time, of course. But it is, especially the 18th as the sun conjuncts Pluto, speaks to this time of structural rebuilding and transformation that's been in play since 2008. Yes, 2008, Capricorn. But that said, this is an Aquarius new moon, and this Aquarius new moon, in a way, puts a spotlight on you and the changes that you've been making over the last few years. This has been a time, Capricorn, about your material life, getting very clear about how you earn a living, what is of value, the investments that you make on a personal level, but also maybe home and family. And I think when Saturn's in this part of the chart, we really need to make sure that we're taking care of our basics, like food, money, shelter. And how has your relationship with that shifted over the past few years? Uranus does turn direct in what's called your fifth sign. And this is picking up on these bigger shifts and maybe even seismic shifts over the past few years about how you express who you are. And by extension, what you think was maybe valuable in 2020 or 2019 is not so valuable now. I mean, maybe the goalpost has changed. Maybe you're like, oh, life is running on a different currency than it did a few years ago. But that said, this is all preparing you for this end of this personal chapter. By March, early March 7th, Saturn, your planet, will switch signs, and that's the start of a new 3-year chapter for you. But like I said, it's about your material life this month, but then again, it's been about your material life over the past few years. And I think Saturn, by extension you, I realize you are Saturn ruled, Saturn is asking you, like, what have you learned about money in the material world, but also what's truly of value? And Venus, which is your career planet, is making a conjunction to Saturn. So you also got some big decisions to make this week as well. Aquarius, happy almost birthday. If your birthday is in the beginning of Aquarius, happy early birthday. And this is a new beginning. It's a renewal for you. You have a Aquarius new moon on the 21st of January, and it's giving you this energy of new beginnings, especially if you're born on the 21st, plus or minus a couple of days. I think it's been a hard time for Aquarius, and I'm just being real for a moment, because you've had Saturn in your sign since 2020, and yes, you are Saturn ruled, so you're like, oh, this should work out, but I think it's really put a lot of weight on your shoulders. It's sort of, and I think that's the hardest thing for Aquarius. It's like, why am I doing this all alone? And I think that's one of the harder things when Saturn is going through our signs. But that said, it's pushed you, this is the silver lining, it's pushed you to take a step up in your life, to take on new duties and responsibilities, to be the authority, to clear out your life if that's necessary. But Saturn has been making something called a square to Uranus, and Uranus turning direct on the 22nd plays off of that energy. And it's been seismic shifts for Aquarius. And even though Aquarius has this reputation of being like, oh, great, new seismic shifts. But I think, it is still a fixed sign. It wants to create stability and security by instinct. So this could be a pivotal week, Aquarius, and it could be a pivotal birthday season. This is the birthday season that also plays into eclipse energy. But this is also a birthday season that is bringing you to the end of Saturn's time in Aquarius. And what has that built in your life? Who have you become since 2020? Maybe you have taken on more responsibility. Maybe you are the authority. Or maybe Saturn is telling you that the goalpost is still over here and you're really feeling that hustle. But that said, it's a powerful week, and maybe you've got some serious decisions to make, especially at the end of this week. Venus conjunct Saturn, but also Uranus turns retrograde, which is giving you a little bit of a wild card. Last but not least, Pisces, Aquarius for you is what's called your 12th sign. You've heard me talk about this, but we need to revisit it, because Saturn has been in your 12th sign since 2020. And when something's in the 12th, especially, Saturn is like one of the major hands on the astrology clock. It's like your life, like the major hour of your life is pointing towards a part of your astrology that talks about endings. I know that's a big word, but the 12th, its job is to get us to release our attachments to the things in the physical that we don't want to bring with us into a new life. Because for you, Pisces, that new life begins theoretically March 7th when Saturn goes into Pisces. You start a brand new cycle, a brand new 30-year cycle. So you want to use Aquarius season to get very clear about what you're still holding on to and what you need to let go, because you don't want to bring it with you into March. Uranus is turning direct in your 3rd sign, so it's about this time of awakening to your voice. And maybe the best thing that can come out of Aquarius season for you is to get really in touch with your inner GPS. We all have it, and I know Pisces is famous for being an intuitive sign, but intuition is not always handed to us. Sometimes we get in our own way, our mind gets in the own way, and we need to really build that muscle. So you, Pisces, can start to listen to yourself, and this is all going to prepare you for this new season. So there we go. 12 signs. That is your look at the astrology of January 16th through 22nd, 2023. Lots going on this week. We will have to check in next week. But in the meantime, again, my name is Katie Sweetman. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do put a newsletter out first thing Monday mornings if you want to jumpstart on the week. I thank you all for joining me week in and week out. I really appreciate your support, your kind words, and I look forward to connecting with you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.